So good morning. My name is, as already said, I'm Euclides de Mesquita Neto. I'm actually a professor at School of Mechanical Engineering here, and I also work at Fapesp at the adjunct panel of coordination. I'm going to speak about Fapesp's Engineering Research Center and programs for advanced research. This is a presentation is based on information organized by our scientific director, Professor Carlos Henrique de Brito Cruz. So let's move on. Outline, I will briefly show you something about the landscape in the state of São Paulo. We'll talk about some industry collaboration research initiatives that we've been supporting and the figures of it. And then we'll address the Fapesp Engineering Research Center programs for advanced research, which is exactly the sort of programs the Cine belongs to. So you have seen this presentation. Professor Rubens just showed us. This is São Paulo. I think we just wanted to stress that São Paulo has a unique position in performing research in Brazil. The figures talk by themselves. We have 32% of the population produce just about half of the science, 1/3 of the graduate programs, PhD awarded in Brazil. So the science and technology system in the state of São Paulo as of 2017 is composed of the following. We have 151 entities we can account. We have something like 15 innovative companies and 70,000 researchers involved in these entities and companies. If we split this 151 institutions, we have federal public universities, 6 public universities, 3 state, 3 federal, 3 other higher public education institutions, 2 state and 1 federal, 66 technological schools, 21 private institutions, 34 research institutions in São Paulo, of which you can have some state and 11 federals, of which we include the 5 Embrapa units in the state of São Paulo. We also have 21 private research institutes and 15,000 innovative companies. So if you take this system employs something like 70,000 researchers, and surprisingly for most of you probably, as the most of these researchers are active in companies, 38,000 people. Then secondly, after that, we have about 27,000 researchers in institutions of higher education, and also we have some 4,000 in state and federal and private research institutes. So if we come to see how much money we expend, the state of São Paulo expend in R&D, research and development and innovation, we can see that in 2017, we spent something like 26 billion reais. And if you split that, you will see that 54% was spent in companies, 26% in higher education institutions. Funding agencies cope for something like 10%, and the research institutes another 10%. You can take a closer look at these numbers, and you will see that the total amount of total expenditure on R&D in São Paulo has been floating around 26 billion. We have a crisis here, so we're floating around the 26, increasing, decreasing, increasing. And if you take a look at this, we have the constituents, the higher education institutions, funding agencies, research institutes, and companies. You can see that the higher education institutions spent something like 7 billion. And what is interesting, if you split in federal, state, and private, the state of São Paulo carries something like 80% of the load here. If we go for the funding agencies, we have these federal agencies and the Fapesp. We also can see that the largest investor in R&D is the São Paulo Research Foundation. As we go to the research institutes, then you have more expenditures from the federal government than from the state. Altogether, and they will have this 13 billion from companies, which amount to the 26. So you have an overview of how is the R&D expenditure is distributed within the state of São Paulo. If you go and take a look at how is the structure of the expenditure in Brazil regarding private sector, state funding, and federal government. If you take a look at Brazil, you see that private funding is a little larger than federal funding, and state funding is smaller. But if you go and take a look at the state of São Paulo, you will see that private funding is the largest chunk, followed by the state expenditure, and the smallest part is actually the federal expenditure in the state of São Paulo, which is, if you take Brazil without the state of São Paulo, you'll see that the federal expenditure makes the larger amount. So there is something particular in the state of São Paulo. There's a lot of private investment in R&D compared to the other states of Brazil. If we take a look, this is another way of saying the same thing. If we take a look at state R&Ds, the R&D expenditures among the different states of Brazil, we have a list of states here. We have the expenditures in billions of reais for the year 2015. You've seen that the state of São Paulo, all the state investments in the state of São Paulo amounted to close to 8 billion. And you can see the other states, and you should notice that Minas and Brazil are very important from the economic point of view, but still, Rio is investing something like 8 times less, and Minas something 30 times less than the state of São Paulo. This is to support the statement that we made at the beginning that São Paulo has stable funding, that has actually continued funding for R&D. Let's talk about a little bit about University Institute research collaboration. What I'd like to show you here is there's an idea that there's not much of private funding coming to Brazilian universities. So what I'm showing here is the percentage of funding, total funding that the universities receive, the percentage of which is coming from the business itself. So we took US universities from comparison. You know, Duke University has something like over 30%, which is amazing. Then you have like MIT, where about 20, Ohio State, something like 20. Then you go all the way to smaller universities. But if you take Unicamp and USP, you can see that the business funding at Unicamp and USP is an average, at a good average level compared to the other universities. So there is business funding at Unicamp and USP at significant amounts. Another measure of the growth of the intensity and of the quality of this business university collaboration, particularly here in the state of São Paulo, it can be measured by these two figures. In this blue line, I show you the number of articles that have co-authors that are working in industry. So you can see there's enormous growth. I mean, even if the figures are not that high, we are going over to 500 to 600 articles in the state of São Paulo with are co-authored by authors. And we also take a look at the yellow line is the percentage of articles from the total produced in the state of São Paulo which have co-authors in the industry. So it's also growing, still is with something like 2% of the total production. I will address this element. But you can see the main partners here. We'll see large Brazilian companies. You will see large pharma companies and service companies. So actually, there's a relatively large portfolio of companies which are producing science with Brazilian authors. You might think that this 2.5% is a relatively low figure, but then we are trying to show what's happening around some of the other universities in the world. We have MIT, which speaks for itself, but you have these two consolidated research universities in Davis and Berkeley in California, and we are two universities, Texas Technical University, University of Nebraska at Lincoln, which are consolidating, and they have percentages between 4 and 6%. And if you have here the state universities and the Federal Institute, ITA, Technical Institute of Aeronautics, you can see that it's still below the average of the other industries, but all figures are around 4 to 6%, in which means that there is also co-authorship industry university in the state of São Paulo. So one important thing is that, for instance, here at Unicamp, you probably know, most of you know the history. We created over 480 startups, which currently means more than 29,000 jobs and 3 billion in revenue measured as of 2017. Some of the logos are shown here. So this is a relatively successful enterprise here to what Unicamp has been able to perform creating startups. If you see this in the evolution throughout the years, this is the number of startups created by students and faculty at Unicamp from 1974 to 2015. You can see this accelerating rate here. That means students and faculty at Unicamp are really going into startups and business-oriented activities. This is for the Unicamp. We have the same picture for the University of São Paulo, the USP. So you have seen that it picked up here in the last decade significantly. And the numbers are similar to the University of Campinas. Now, once I've given you this scenario, I'm talking about the Engineers Research Program, which is, as we'll see, exactly the kind of program Cine is. And Fapesp has created these programs, also called Engineering or Science Research Center, and the Cine is one of them. You will see that it's not the only one. It's probably, I will show you, the largest presently. These centers are usually intended to build an advanced research agenda, which will make some institutions and industry here in international or internationally competitive. The center usually hosted by a university, has a professor as a PI, has an adjunct director, which is belongs to the researchers from the company and may be a visiting professor at university. And one thing that I should mention is that other researchers that work in industry or academia are very welcome to join the project as visiting professors. Usually, the kind of project regarding funding is a 10-year contract, which varies from 2 to 6 million years. That's the experience we have per year. And the funders are Fapesp, the company, plus the university, and which the university, the main contribution is through labor costs. A typical proportion in those projects is that Fapesp pays 1, industry 1, and university through labor costs 2 times. We have presently 9 centers selected. 2 are in selection and 1 in negotiation. I would like to show you some of the actually existing research centers. You will see that the amount being invested for the 10-year projects for all 9 projects in the 10-year period is over R$1 billion in contracts. So as we can see, we have biofuel for Peugeot Citroën and Unicamp. We have green chemistry, GlaxoSmithKline, target discovery, GSK, natural gas is Shell again, with Poly and USP. We have human well-being with Natura, which is Brazilian Cosmetic Institute. We have an agricultural climate change and gene editing with Embrapa and Unicamp. We have this new energy with the 4 programs, as I learned, which is the one we are talking today, this seminar is about. As you can, we have oil and gas with Tatuar and Quinor just started at Unicamp. And we have a biological control agriculture by Copert, which is Dutch. We have 2 in analysis. One is open calls with artificial intelligence with the BAM, and that is a digital technology oil and gas center with Petrobras, which is in preparation. But I like to stress that the Cine, which is the one we are talking here, the name Cine could be there, is, as we measure today, the largest investment we are doing in those engineering research centers. Fapesp does not only do engineer research centers, we have joint industry, university or industry support in another 2 programs. One is the PTIS, Program for Technological Innovation in Industries, but we have a small business program, which is Small Business Innovative Research, which we call PIPI, and this is a real success. We've been awarding, last year we awarded 270 grants for this small business program, and this means just 1 grant per working day, which is significant. And here is something of the effect we had. We choose some of the effect that this small business program Fapesp had on the companies themselves, the small ones. In average, most of the companies, before contacting Fapesp, before entering the program, after leaving the program, there was an increase in 40% in total jobs in the industry, in the small industries that took part of it, 30% in direct contracts, an increase in direct contracts, 60% of personal jobs who had positions with higher education, of which 90% at graduate level. So there's really an increase in qualification. And we choose some of the industries here to show the impact of this small business innovation research project. The blue is the number of employees in some industries before getting to the PP, and the yellow one is after the PP, which shows that the program has a decent measure of success. So if I come to a conclusion, I would like to state that if you consider the state of São Paulo, there's a strong environment for research and development, which with 70,000 researchers, strong efforts in academia and business. There's a strong base in science at universities and a lot of graduate programs, internationally qualified in graduate programs. There's a growing portfolio of applied research that has been seen by the number of co-authorships, by number of startups that I've shown here. And also this collaboration that we've been emphasizing has 2 dimensions. One is geographic, and means we are working on international and regional agreements. The other is institutional. We've been pursuing to increase the support for international university business joint research. So this is basically what I wanted to talk about at Fapesp and Engineering Research Centers. Thank you very much.